So let's take a look at the window sticker on this vehicle. This thing carries a $76,810 price tag. However, Eric, they can get this thing for a lot less than that, can't they?
We're definitely going to do whatever it takes to make a car deal.
First of all, this is the Platinum Edition, so it's going to come with a lot of standard features. A lot of the features that you might have to opt for in an XLT or a lower trim package are going to come standard on this, such as like the LED headlights, the lift gate, hands-free lift gate, the power folding mirrors, panoramic sunroof, LED taillights, trailer sway controller, windshield wiper de-icer. That's kind of cool. I think it actually sprays warm water on the windshield, if I'm correct.
Right.
Plus a lot of the other features. Now, this has the 3.5-liter EcoBoost with the 10-speed automatic transmission. 10-speed transmission not only means a smoother acceleration, but it also means that it's able to find the right gear at the right time quicker and better. And that's part of the reason why not only do you get better fuel economy with it, but you're also going to have more horsepower and torque. It equates to that better when you can line up the perfect gear at the right speed at the right time. For this model, it's going to have the white Platinum Tri-Coat, which is an upgraded option. It's going to have the second row bucket seats, which is also an upgraded option, as well as a heavy-duty trailer tow package with a 373 rear axle ratio. Now, I don't know what that equates to with maximum tow rating on this specific vehicle, but I will find out, and I will put that in the description. And then it has a cargo mat that's reversible, $40 charge. Brings this one to $76,810. 20 miles per gallon combined, 17 city, 24 highway, which is pretty dang good for an SUV of this size. You would be hard-pressed to find any SUV that can really push that mid-20 mile per gallon fuel range, especially when you're getting something this powerful with this much horsepower and torque. Now let's take a look at the interior of this specific vehicle. As you can see, there are some differences between it and the F-150. Especially in how the door trimming is, the soft touch material. It actually looks a bit more luxurious than you might get in an F-150 or Super Duty truck. Moving on, even the embroidery on the seats, the whole look of the seat, is different than the F-150. The center console area is also different. You now have this rotary knob for your gear selector. But what I want to do is quickly move to the 2017 model just so you can see how much of a departure from that design this is. So looking at the 2017 model, you'll see the big plastic door. They put a little bit of soft material right here, some fake wood right here, but you can see the door itself just doesn't really scream luxury at all. Going on to the interior, the seats, even though they're in that nice King Ranch color, they're very basic looking seats. Moving on to the interior of the truck. It's not a bad looking interior, but it has a very, bland look to it. And the interior of this is definitely a far cry from the interior of the 2018 model. Especially still sticking with this kind of gray trimmed accent panels, and I've never really cared for that on their SUVs. I mean, I can see doing that on a pickup truck, just not necessarily their SUVs. So let's hop back over to the 2018 model because it looks a lot nicer. So getting in the 18 model again, just a far, far cry from the 17 model. And just the overall look is definitely more luxurious looking. Now, this is not a King Ranch model, so you're not going to see the brown King Ranch seats that you might normally see, but this is a Platinum model, and as you can see, the whole look of this SUV is different. Just how they've trimmed off everything is so much nicer. Soft touch materials everywhere you look. This is all soft touch material. Stitching, everything looks nicer in this vehicle. So now we're inside of the vehicle. Let's start it up. Push button start. Give you a quick little look at everything as it comes on. This truck, of course, has heated and cooled seats. Big difference between heated seats and cooled seats versus heated seats and ventilated seats are that ventilated seats simply take cab air, suck it in, and blow it out. Cooled seats take air-conditioned air, air that's been conditioned before it gets into the cab of the vehicle and then blows that through the seats. So it's the difference between having cool air coming out of the seats versus having the cab level air coming out of the seats. Here's your console up here. All your controls for the panoramic sunroof and moonroof tilt and all those features. Of course, you get HomeLink in this vehicle. Here's your steering wheel controls and your dash. So again, the interior of this vehicle is very, very similar to that of a high-trimmed F-150 or Super Duty truck. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, if you're going to pay this much for a vehicle, why don't they have their own unique interior? Just like the GMC Denali and the Chevy Tahoe, the interiors pretty much replicate that of their higher-trimmed vehicles. Now, some of your extremely higher-trimmed vehicles, like an Escalade or, even the Navigator, are going to have some subtle differences simply because that's kind of a different segment of vehicle that they're trying to compete in. And they usually carry a price tag that's about $15,000 to $20,000 greater than even the highest trimmed version of their more what you would consider volume vehicles like this. Now, at $77,000, you want to know what you're going to get. And again, you're getting a lot of the same features you would get in a very highly trimmed King Ranch, Platinum, Limited, Super Duty, or F-150. It's going to look very familiar to you if you drive one of those vehicles. For me, I know where everything is. If I want to access my cameras, I know where the camera button is. If I want to access my lane departure, I know where that is. I know where all my knobs and controls are. I know where my climate control stuff is. And it's just easy to navigate because of all that. So Sync 3 is essentially the same system for any of these vehicles. And it gives you the ability to have a very familiar feel when you are moving from one vehicle to another vehicle. So you can see you have your 12-volt outlet here. You have your trailer backup assist here. This is really cool. When you are hooked to a trailer, this gives you the ability to steer the vehicle using this specific knob at a slow speed so you know specifically what direction you want your trailer to go. People that have this feature apparently absolutely love it. So that's a really cool feature, and it's nice that it's an optional feature for the Expedition as well, because a lot of people will use this to haul a travel trailer or a utility trailer or a boat. And once I give you the towing specs on this specific vehicle, I'm assuming, if I had to guess, it's probably going to be in about the 8,000 to 9,000 pound maximum towing range. But once I find out, I'll post that in the description. Here are your cup holders. You have a little coin holder right here. And you have a pocket right here, which is really cool because it has your charging base station right here. This is a wireless charging system, so if your phone supports wireless charging, you just drop your phone right here and you're good. USB connection, so you can connect your media to your Sync 3 system if you have MP3, stuff like that. Gives you the same dual glove box option that you get in the Super Duty truck. Again, all soft touch material. One of the big upgrades to this vehicle is the new stereo system. It's no longer Sony. It's Bang & Olufsen, I believe is how it's pronounced, but it's the new B&O stereo system that you get with this vehicle. Another look at the back. So from the back seat, this is going to be a huge selling feature for a lot of folks. So the previous model Expedition, to sit in the back seat was kind of a cramped affair. It just did not really lend itself well to people in this middle row. The third row has always been very spacious on Expeditions and Navigators because they elevate it slightly, and it actually prevents you from having to bend your knees up into your chest like you might see with a lot of SUVs, especially the more mid-size ones. They give you USB and power connections in the back, USB and your 12-volt power connection back there. As you can see, the sunroof extends all the way back to the back. Gives you more controls. They've moved the controls up as well, so they're easier to get to. 2 USB jacks as well as a 110 with 150 watt capability. All your climate control features are back here as well. But the big story here is the legroom. So the front seat is in my normal seating position. The back seat is actually slid back. So you have the ability here to slide the seat up and back to give more room to people in the third row, or to give more room to people in the second row. There is a good foot between my knee and the back of the front seat. And that just equates to a much happier rear passenger. Now, what I want to do real quick is I'm going to move over to the 2017 so you can see just how dramatic the difference is. So I am now hopping in the back seat of this 2017 model. And this is my normal seated position. I have maybe 3 inches of space between my knee and the back of the seat. I hopped in the front to adjust the seat to my normal seated position, and you can just see how uncomfortable this could be. Now, an interesting thing to notice with the passenger front seat is it's reclined and scooted back slightly. That would probably be the position of maybe your spouse when they're trying to relax on a long road trip. But look what it does to the back seat here. It really makes this very, very tight. You really can't fit your legs here. So if I had to make a fist here, you'll see there's not much room here. And you do not have the ability with this model to slide the seats back at all. So even though your third row passengers have a pretty fair amount of leg room, your second row passengers are going to be very, very cramped. And it just doesn't bode well for people who are going to be using these for long trips. Also, if you look at the center console stack, everything is positioned really low. So you have to really lean down to get to all of it. You still have the 110 jack, 150 watts. You have your 12 volt jack here, but everything again is positioned really low, and your climate controls on that side while your power inputs are on this side. One thing you'll also notice is the center console on this vehicle is much, much, much narrower. So if I stretch my hand across, you can see how it is there, and we'll move to the other vehicle so you can see that one. Before I do that, look how much room you have when you're trying to get out. You open the door right here, and as you crawl out, you're right up against the door. Now getting in the back seat again of the 2018 model, look at that difference, guys. So the other one had about that much room. Look at this. I can't even touch the two ends. And then when you look at the center console, remember how close my hand was across? So that just shows you how much more width you have and how much more hip room. Plus, they've now segmented the air conditioning and climate control so it's easier to access for both parties, as well as better positioned all your power plugs and outlets so you're not having to lean over as much. So the other controls were down here, now these are up here. Look at the passenger side as well. The passenger seat is actually much further back than the driver's seat. Look at all the legroom that they still have. Plus, look at all the rear legroom that the middle passenger has. In addition to still giving the third row passenger significant amount of room to stretch out. And the third row in the 18 model now reclines. So if you have passengers in the back, it actually reclines to give them the ability to relax a little bit better versus being in a more upright position. Let's just show exiting this vehicle. The door is much wider and you have much more room to get out of this vehicle. You know, you really aren't going to care how a V6 exhaust tone sounds on this versus a V8 or anything else you can want this with, simply because it's designed for luxury and it's designed to be quiet. And this vehicle is very, very quiet. To emphasize what I mean when I say quiet, I have the hood open now. You can barely hear this thing running. It's not the sound you're going to get out of a Cummins, but it is an exceptionally quiet engine. And it just sounds really, really quiet. It's just really, really pleasant. And that's what you want in a luxury SUV like this. Again, I just love the look of the headlights on this vehicle. They're really getting aggressive with the whole design and shape. All LEDs, really cool. Now we're going to take this thing for a drive. Camera can come in handy, especially in tight areas. There's your front camera, and it turns off once you hit about 15 miles an hour. Actually, I think it turns off when you hit about 5 miles an hour. Gonna drive this thing around a little bit and see what we think. What I can tell you right off the bat is that the throttle is definitely more sensitive in this vehicle than it is in the F-150. It feels very ready to surge forward whenever you hit the gas. It's hard to remember when to say gas and when to say diesel, because I don't want to say when I hit the gas in a diesel truck, because that's kind of counterintuitive. However, this is a gas vehicle, so I can say it. Now, this vehicle has a lot of power. And you know what? It sounds good from the inside too. They did a really good job, again, with that whole ability to replicate kind of that sound of a bigger engine inside the vehicle. That is not something they did with the Navigator, though. that was definitely something they saved for the 2018 model, because I can tell you my wife's Lincoln Navigator does not sound that great when you hit the gas on it. But this sounds really good. Yep, they definitely make the interior of this sound a lot better than the previous generation EcoBoost. Man, this thing gets up and goes. No lack of power in this SUV. And the cool thing is, because they do replicate that sound of a bigger engine, it actually sounds really good and feels really good when you're accelerating. One of the nice things about the sound of this engine is, from the inside, it gives you that overall feel that you have a very powerful SUV. And you can tell just by driving it, this thing has a tremendous amount of power. Very smooth. Very, very smooth ride. One thing I will tell you, and it's something that I don't really care for, is the fact that everyone's going to these larger wheel diameters. I know they look good. I know people really like the look of a 22-inch wheel, but it does take away from the ride quality slightly. It basically gives you less sidewall, so you don't have as much of the tire absorbing some of the road imperfections. And because of that, you feel a little bit more of the road than you might if, let's say, they put a 20-inch wheel on. That's one of the reasons why when we bought the Navigator for my wife, she opted for the 20-inch wheel package instead of the 22-inch wheel package, because it gives you a smoother ride. And on an SUV like this, that's really what matters. You want the ride to be as smooth as possible. You want this thing to feel great whenever you get to your destination, even if that destination is hours and hours and hours away. Feels very controlled. The steering is definitely much lighter than that of like a Super Duty. Mainly because it is riding on a whole different type of suspension. So this vehicle has fully independent suspension front and rear, whereas like a Super Duty is going to have a solid axle in the back and a solid axle up front if you get it in four-wheel drive. But again, very, very well-mannered SUV. Very quiet interior. I have the camera actually stuck to a plunger mount that I have on the sunroof, so if you're hearing any noise, you're hearing it because it's right up against the sunroof. So one thing that Ford does, which is really nice on these newer interior layouts, is that they replicate many of the touchscreen buttons with manual buttons, or actual physical buttons that you can use. And that's really nice, and it's really convenient, especially if you have your navigation map up and you need to turn on your heated steering wheel, or you need to turn on different air conditioning controls, or adjust the temperature between the driver and passenger seat without having to interfere with what's up front. Of course, this vehicle has that auto start, auto stop feature, which when you pull up to a red light, it automatically shuts off the engine until you take your foot off of the brake. Then it starts it back up again. And then if you do that, it turns the feature off. So if you pull up to a red light, stops the engine, take your foot off, put it back on, it temporarily turns that feature off and just keeps the engine running. Of course, you have the button up here to quickly turn it off and on, which a lot of people claim they don't really like that feature, and I don't know why. I think it's a pretty nice feature, especially considering how much idle time vehicles generally have, and the ability to reduce that idle time significantly. I think most people would be able to wrap their heads around. The vehicle does feel a bit loose on the road. It feels well-mannered, but as with most full-size luxury SUVs, it's designed more around a soft feel. So when you drive it, you definitely feel the vehicle motion a little bit more than you might in other types of vehicles, like full-size pickup trucks. All in all, though, it's a very balanced, very stable-feeling SUV. You know, I know people that don't have heated steering wheels generally hate the feature, or they claim they do, but when it's really cold outside, which it's not that cold right now, but when it drops down into the 30s and below, it's really nice to have a heated steering wheel. It just makes your hands kind of get out of that numbing phase much quicker than they might otherwise. I did some research into other vehicles that compete against this particular vehicle, such as the GMC Denali and a loaded Chevy Tahoe LTZ, as well as the Infiniti and some of the other SUVs that are available on the market. If you try to compare this vehicle against something like a Dodge Durango or even a Honda Pilot, you're not really in the same category of vehicles, mainly because this is going to have a lot of features that those vehicles don't, but primarily it's a much larger and more powerful SUV than those vehicles. It's able to tow more, it's able to carry more, and it's going to have far more room inside of it. However, a fully loaded out Honda Pilot or Dodge Durango is going to run in the $55,000 range when you get all the features added to it, and even up to $60,000 now. Whereas a Cadillac Escalade is going to run in the $90,000 to $100,000 range, or even greater than that in some cases. A loaded out Lincoln Navigator is also going to be in that $90,000 to $100,000 range. A Lexus LX model or even the GX model can run upwards of the high 70s all the way over $100,000. Toyota Land Cruiser is definitely in the $100,000 range, about $95,000 for a loaded model. And when you look at a Denali, those even run into the high 80s. So when you see what this vehicle offers and all the technology it has, the 360 camera, radar adaptive cruise control, just great trailer towing features, great interior, Sync 3, map navigation systems, heated, cooled seats. This vehicle actually has the massaging seat feature. So I just turned it on. You can see how it actually switches, and you can control the massaging feature. It's more of a shiatsu style massage as opposed to just a vibrating seat that some vehicles have. But when you compare it, you find that this is not a bad value, and it compares very well against vehicles like the Tahoe and the Denali. And it does it in a package that's very modern. So when you get one of these, you're not going to feel as if it's a dated vehicle after a couple of years. It has so much tech, so many new features that I really don't know what you would be missing. I guess at the end of the day, I can't necessarily find a feature this vehicle doesn't have that a competing vehicle does have. That makes sense. My wife is looking at a Lexus SUV, and I showed her this, and this has probably 20 to 30 more luxury features than the Lexus SUV had. So when you're actually comparing the two, unless you're simply going for the Lexus name, there's not really a lot you can say about a Lexus being better than this, or being worth the extra money, or even being worth the same amount of money. This isn't even as expensive as a higher-end Lexus like the LX. This is more in the same price range and even a bit less than a GX series, which isn't their highest model. It's definitely going to come in lower than the Infiniti QX80 series, and it's definitely going to be more in line with other premium non-luxury brand SUVs in terms of price. Like I said, the Tahoe LTZ, as well as the Yukon, and even the GMC Denali. Anyways, guys, I sure hope you enjoyed this video. I want to take a moment to thank AutoNation Ford here in Corpus Christi, Texas, for allowing me to take this vehicle out. They never require me to bring a sales rep or anybody with me. In this particular case, Eric was my sales rep for my F450, and even the F350 I had before that. I asked him to tag along just in case he knew some specific details that I didn't know or that just weren't readily available about this particular vehicle. Guys, this is a really nice vehicle. You know, if you're shopping for a full-size SUV, I'm not going to say this is the one you need to get, but you should definitely include it in the vehicles you look at, because all full-size SUVs are really nice. The Denali's a beautiful SUV, the Tahoe's a beautiful SUV, the Escalade is, so are all the other brands that are out there. But I really think you should give the Expedition another look if you haven't. Anyways, guys, if you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, hit that subscribe button, and also give me a thumbs up. We'll talk to you soon.